Christmas Eve arrived quietly that year. By 8 months pregnant, my body no longer moved the way it used to. Every step felt heavier than the last, like gravity had decided to double its grip on me overnight. My lower back ached constantly. My feet swelled by late afternoon. Even standing still required effort. Still, my heart felt light. The house looked exactly the way I'd imagined it would when I pictured our last Christmas before the baby arrived. Soft fairy lights lined the windows. The tree stood glowing in the corner of the living room, ornaments catching the light each time the heater clicked on. The faint scent of cinnamon and evergreen lingered in the air, warm and familiar. For days, my husband had been in an unusually good mood. He'd smiled more, touched my stomach more often, dropped vague hints about a special Christmas surprise he'd planned just for me. Something meaningful, he said. Something to make this holiday unforgettable before everything changed. I didn't press him for details. Pregnancy has a way of lowering your expectations in quiet ways. I wasn't dreaming of anything extravagant. A thoughtful gesture felt like more than enough. A reminder that we were still us, before midnight feedings and sleepless nights rewrote everything. That evening, I moved slowly through the house, straightening things that didn't need straightening, folding a blanket, adjusting a ribbon on a gift I'd already wrapped. The baby shifted inside me, stretching hard enough to steal my breath for a second. I rested a hand on my stomach and waited for the movement to pass. "Easy," I whispered. The doorbell rang. The sound cut cleanly through the quiet, sharp and sudden. My heart jumped. This has to be it, I thought. For a brief, foolish moment, excitement surged through me. The kind that makes you forget the ache in your back and the heaviness in your legs. The kind that makes you believe someone has been thinking about you when you weren't looking. My husband was still in the living room. "I'll get it," he said, already starting to stand. "I've got it," I replied quickly. I don't know why I felt the urge to beat him to the door. Maybe I didn't want him spoiling the surprise by hovering. Maybe I just wanted to be the first to see whatever he'd planned. I moved as quickly as my swollen belly allowed, one hand brushing the wall for balance as I crossed the hallway. When I opened the door, cold air rushed in. There was no person standing there. Just a small package sitting neatly on the doormat. I frowned, disappointed but amused at myself. Probably a forgotten online order. Something mundane arriving at the worst possible moment. I picked it up, shut the door with my foot, and turned back toward the living room. Still smiling. Still expecting something. I made it 2 steps before my body stopped on its own. In the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights, I saw them. My husband was sitting on the couch, relaxed, comfortable in a way that made my chest tighten. Standing behind him was a woman I had never seen before. She wasn't dressed for the cold. Her coat lay draped over the arm of the chair like it belonged there. She stood close to him, too close, with a familiarity that didn't belong in our living room. His hand rested casually on her shoulder. Not awkward, not hesitant. Natural, as though this was where it had always been. She leaned into him slightly, her body angled toward his in a way that spoke of ease, of comfort, of something practiced. Her head tilted just enough for him to feel her there. Neither of them noticed me at first. I stood frozen, the package still in my hands, my mind struggling to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. For a split second, I searched for another explanation. A friend, a coworker, someone I'd forgotten about. But the way his fingers curved against her shoulder erased every possibility at once. In that instant, understanding hit me with the force of ice water. The surprise he'd been hinting at wasn't meant for me. I hadn't interrupted a thoughtful holiday moment planned for his pregnant wife. I had walked in on his secret. The package slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. The sound finally drew their attention. My husband turned first. His expression changed the moment he saw me. Not confusion, recognition. That was when I knew. For a few seconds, no one moved. The Christmas lights blinked softly behind them, oblivious. The heater hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed, tires hissing against cold pavement. My husband stood up slowly, not startled, not panicked, measured. He took a step toward me, then stopped, as if recalculating the distance. "Hey," he said quietly, "let's talk." The woman behind him straightened, her body pulling away just enough to suggest she suddenly remembered herself. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away again. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked cautious, like someone who knew this moment had been coming. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My body felt strangely disconnected from my thoughts, as if everything below my neck had decided to shut down to protect itself. My hand instinctively went to my stomach. The baby shifted, unsettled by the sudden tension. My husband noticed the gesture immediately. "Please," he said, lowering his voice, "you shouldn't be standing like that." That word again, shouldn't. He reached for the back of the chair, steadying himself, grounding the room around his control. It was a movement I recognized. He always did that when conversations veered off script. The woman finally spoke. "I can explain," she said. Her voice was calm, not apologetic, not defensive. I looked at her then. Really looked. She was younger than me. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. Her hair was pulled back loosely, as though she'd been there long enough to stop worrying about appearances. She wore no jewelry, no obvious markers of intrusion. She looked like someone who belonged. That realization hurt more than the touch I'd seen. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded steady, even to me. My husband exhaled. "This isn't the right moment," he said. "You're upset." "I asked a question," I replied. The woman glanced at him, waiting. That was answer enough. I nodded once, absorbing it. "Get your coat," I said to her. She hesitated. "I think we should—" "Now," I said. She moved then, lifting her coat from the chair. As she did, I noticed how naturally she navigated the room. She didn't bump into anything. She didn't ask where to put her shoes. She knew this space. When she reached the door, she paused. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she said. I laughed once, sharply. "Like what?" I asked. "In my own house?" She flinched, just slightly, then stepped outside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. My husband turned back to me. "This isn't what you think," he began. I raised a hand. "Don't," I said. He stopped. For the first time that evening, his certainty wavered. "I need to sit down," I said. He moved instantly, pulling the chair out for me, guiding me as if I might fall. I let him. My legs were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up. I sat. He crouched in front of me, his hands hovering, unsure where to land. "You're stressed," he said softly. "This isn't good for the baby." There it was. I looked at him. "You didn't think about that before," I said. "When she was here." He winced. "It's complicated." "No," I replied, "it's not." I took a breath, forcing my thoughts to line up. "How long?" I asked again. He looked away. "Since before the pregnancy," he said. The words landed slowly, one by one. Before. That single word rewrote months of my life. Every appointment, every kick. Every night I'd fallen asleep believing we were moving forward together. "And the surprise?" Wedge asked quietly. "The one you kept mentioning." He swallowed. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I felt something unfamiliar settle into place. Clarity. "You didn't plan to," I said. He didn't argue. Outside, snow had begun to fall. Soft, silent, indifferent. I stood slowly, steadying myself against the arm of the couch. "I'm going to my sister's," I said. "Tonight?" he asked. "Yes." He reached for my arm. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. For the first time, he listened. I grabbed my coat, my bag, my phone. The package still lay on the floor, forgotten. As I opened the door, I paused. "You said this Christmas would be unforgettable," I said without turning around. He didn't respond. I stepped into the cold. And for the first time that night, I didn't look back. The drive to my sister's house felt longer than it should have. Every stoplight seemed to linger, every turn sharper than I remembered. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as if loosening my hold might cause everything else to slip out of place. I kept the radio off. Silence felt safer. My sister opened the door before I could knock. One look at my face and she stepped aside without asking questions. I walked past her, set my bag down by the couch, and finally let myself sink into the cushions. Only then did my body react. My hands began to shake. My chest tightened. Tears came without warning, hot and relentless, blurring the edges of the room. She sat beside me, her arm wrapping around my shoulders. "I'm here," she said quietly. I nodded, unable to speak yet. When the words finally came, they tumbled out unevenly. Christmas Eve, the doorbell, the woman, his hand, the way he hadn't looked surprised. My sister didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "Did you know her?" she asked. "No." That answer felt heavier than it should have. "She knew the house," I added. "She knew where things were." My sister's jaw tightened. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on my stomach. The baby moved occasionally, as if responding to my restlessness. I whispered apologies I didn't fully understand yet. Morning brought messages, missed calls, texts, voicemails. My husband's name filled my screen. "We need to talk. This isn't what you think. You're blowing this out of proportion. Think about the baby." That last one made my stomach twist. He showed up that afternoon. My sister answered the door and blocked the entrance with her body. "She doesn't want to see you," she said. "I just need a minute," he replied. "This is between us." "She's not alone," my sister said, "and she's pregnant." He paused, recalibrating. "I brought some things," he said, lifting a small bag. "She left in a hurry." My sister took it and closed the door. From the couch, I listened to his footsteps retreat. Later that evening, I opened the bag. Inside were my prenatal vitamins, a scarf, and a folder. The same folder. Papers neatly organized, tabs still in place. My breath caught. He hadn't brought it by accident. I opened it slowly. Hospital forms, insurance documents, consent paperwork. My name appeared in familiar places. His appeared more often. At the time, I trusted him to handle it. Trusted that partnership meant shared decisions. Now the pages felt heavier in my hands. That night my phone buzzed again. "We need to get on the same page," he wrote. "This isn't good for your stress levels." I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at the papers until a single question surfaced, clear and undeniable. When had he started deciding things without me? By the second day at my sister's house, the story had already started changing. Not in my head. Out there. I knew because the messages shifted. At first, my husband had sounded panicked, urgent, desperate to explain. Then the tone softened. "She didn't mean anything. It wasn't serious. You're misunderstanding what you saw." By the third message, the blame crept in. "You left without letting me explain. You embarrassed me. This could have been handled privately." Privately. As if what I walked in on had been a misunderstanding between adults, not a betrayal happening in my living room while I carried his child. My sister answered most of the calls for me. When she didn't, I let them ring. Late that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. A voicemail followed. "I'm sorry you had to see that," a woman's voice said. Calm, controlled. "But I think you deserve to hear the truth from me, not just from him." My stomach dropped. I listened again. She didn't sound nervous. She didn't sound ashamed. She sounded prepared. Another message came in seconds later. "I didn't know you were going to walk in like that." That was a lie. If she had thought she was hidden, she wouldn't have been standing behind him with her arms on his shoulders like she belonged there. I deleted the messages without replying. That evening, my sister told me what people were saying. "He told Mom it was a misunderstanding," she said, "that you overreacted." "Of course he did." "That it's been over for a while," she continued, "that you walked in on something that wasn't what it looked like." I let out a slow breath. "Did he say who she was?" I asked. My sister hesitated. "He said she's just someone from work." Just someone from work. The words stacked neatly on top of each other, like a lie that had been practiced. I thought about the way she'd stood in my house, the way she'd leaned into him, the way neither of them had jumped apart when I walked in. That wasn't new, that wasn't ending, that was routine. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his hand on her shoulder again. The casualness of it, the comfort, the way his body hadn't reacted with guilt, only with calculation. By morning, the anger arrived. Not explosive, focused. I called him. He answered immediately. Thank God, he said. I've been trying to reach you. Who is she? I asked, a pause. I told you. No, I said. You didn't. She's someone I work with, he said again. It just crossed a line. How long? I asked. Silence. How long? I repeated. Longer than it should have, he said. That was the closest thing to honesty I'd heard from him. And Christmas Eve? I asked. You planned that. I didn't plan for you to see it like that. But you planned for her to be there. Another pause. Yes. The word landed hard. I hung up. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. If he wanted to rewrite what happened, I would make sure the truth stayed exactly where it belonged, in the open. By the time New Year's Day arrived, the affair no longer felt like something hidden. It felt like something rearranging my life from the outside. People who hadn't checked on me in months suddenly wanted to see how I was holding up. Family members called with voices that sounded careful, rehearsed, as if they'd already been briefed on which version of the story they were allowed to believe. The language was subtle. Things happen. Marriage is complicated. You don't want to stress yourself right now. Stress. That word followed me everywhere, trailing behind every conversation like a warning label, as if my reaction, not his betrayal, was the real danger. I stayed at my sister's longer than I planned, not because I felt fragile, but because the silence there was honest. No one tried to soften what had happened. No one asked me to consider his feelings. One afternoon, while my sister was out running errands, I decided to step outside on my own. I hadn't been out much since Christmas Eve. My body felt heavier now, slower. Pregnancy had a way of making the world feel slightly out of sync. I walked to the corner cafe, the same one my husband and I used to stop by on weekends. I hesitated before opening the door. Then I went in anyway. The place looked exactly the same. Same chalkboard menu. Same soft music playing overhead. Same table by the window where we used to sit. And then I saw her. She was standing at the counter, laughing with the barista, completely at ease. Her hair was pulled back the same way it had been that night. Her posture relaxed, confident. She hadn't disappeared after Christmas Eve. She had simply continued living. Our eyes met. The smile slid from her face slowly, like it had nowhere to go once recognition set in. I didn't turn around. I ordered my drink calmly and waited. When she spoke, her voice came from behind me. I didn't expect to see you here. I turned. Neither did I said. She shifted her weight, uncomfortable now. I just want you to know, she began. This isn't what you think. I laughed softly. That's interesting, I replied, because it's exactly what I saw. Her jaw tightened. He told me you knew, she said. That was the moment something inside me went cold. He said you were aware of us, she continued, that you'd come to terms with it. I stared at her. I'm 8 months pregnant, I said quietly. Does that look like someone who's come to terms with anything? Her face drained of color. He said the marriage was basically over, she whispered. Of course he did. She took a step back, shaken now, as if the reality she'd been standing on had shifted beneath her feet. I didn't know, she said. I studied her carefully. I didn't believe that completely. But I also knew one thing for certain. Whatever he told her, it had been enough to keep her there. I don't need your apology, I said. I just need you to understand something. She waited. You didn't break my marriage, I said. You just walked into the space he made for you. I turned and left before she could respond. The walk back felt longer. My phone buzzed halfway home. A message from my husband. Did you run into her today? I stopped on the sidewalk, so he already knew. You don't get to monitor where I go, I typed, then deleted it. Instead, I wrote, your affair is no longer a private misunderstanding. He called immediately. I didn't answer. That night, the pressure increased. Messages from mutual friends, from his mother, from people who had no idea what it felt like to be pregnant and abandoned at the same time. He made a mistake. You don't throw away a family over this. Think about the baby. That phrase again, as if the baby were a bargaining chip instead of a human life growing inside me. What no one seemed to say was the obvious truth. He had brought another woman into our home on Christmas Eve, not by accident, not impulsively, deliberately. I lay awake that night, my hand resting on my stomach, feeling the baby shift gently. "I won't let them rewrite this," I whispered. The next morning, I found out he'd already started trying. He'd told his family I was unstable, overly emotional, that pregnancy hormones had made me dramatic. He'd told coworkers that I was taking space and that things were complicated. He'd told her, the mistress, that I would eventually calm down. The realization hit me slowly but firmly. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about erasing the impact of it. By lunchtime, I made another decision. If he wanted to control the narrative, I would step directly into it. I called a lawyer, not to threaten, not to punish, to protect myself. When my husband found out, he didn't react the way I expected. He laughed. "You're really going to do this?" he asked. "At this stage?" "At what stage?" I replied. "You're pregnant," he said. "This isn't the time to be making emotional decisions." I smiled. "This isn't emotional," I said. "This is clarity." Silence stretched between us. "You're overreacting," he finally said. "No," I replied. "I'm responding." That night, a photo appeared on social media. A group gathering. Casual, smiling faces. And there he was, standing beside her. Too close, as if nothing had happened. As if Christmas Eve had been a misunderstanding only I remembered. That was when I understood something important. He wasn't sorry. He was just surprised I hadn't stayed quiet. The photo stayed on my screen longer than it should have. I didn't zoom in. I didn't need to. The distance between them said enough. The angle of his body, the way her shoulder leaned toward him. Familiarity always leaves fingerprints. It wasn't the fact that he was smiling. It was the ease of it. As if Christmas Eve had been a small inconvenience, already tucked away and dismissed. My sister found me sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand, staring. "You okay?" she asked. I handed her the phone. She exhaled slowly when she saw it. "They're not even trying to hide," she said. "No," I replied. "They're trying to normalize it." That was the difference. If he had gone quiet, pulled back, disappeared for a while, it might have suggested regret. But this was a continuation. This was confidence. This was him assuming I would eventually fall in line. My phone buzzed again. A message from him. "Don't overthink this." It was a group thing. I didn't reply. Another message followed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Harder, as if betrayal were an obstacle he needed me to stop placing in his path. That night I dreamed I was standing in my living room again. The lights were on. The tree was gone. The couch was empty. Every surface felt stripped bare, like the house itself had moved on without me. I woke with my heart racing and my hand pressed to my stomach. The baby kicked, sharp and insistent. "I know," I whispered. "I know." The next day, my husband showed up unannounced. My sister didn't let him in. "I just want to talk," he said through the door. "You've done enough talking," she replied. "I brought something," he insisted, "for the baby." That caught my attention. I stood slowly and walked to the door, stopping just out of view. "What is it?" I asked. "A gift," he said. "I thought it might help." "Help what?" He held up a small box when my sister cracked the door open. Inside was a baby blanket, neutral colors, soft fabric, something that looked thoughtful on the surface. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest. He still thought gestures could erase context. "Can we talk?" he asked again. "Here is fine," I replied. His jaw clenched. "This isn't fair," he said quietly. "You're turning everyone against me." I almost laughed. "You did that yourself," I said. "I just stopped covering for you." He glanced past my sister, trying to catch my eye. "This isn't how I wanted this to go," he said. "You brought her into our house," I replied, "on Christmas Eve." "That wasn't planned," he said quickly. "But it wasn't stopped either," I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Not guilt. Fear. "You're pregnant," he said, lowering his voice. "You shouldn't be dealing with this kind of stress." "There it is," I said. He frowned. "That line," I continued. You keep using it like it's supposed to end the conversation. It's true, he insisted. No, I said. It's convenient. The silence stretched. I love you, he said finally. I believed that he believed it. But love that makes room for someone else while I'm carrying your child doesn't get to ask for patience. You love the version of me that stays quiet, I said. That version doesn't exist anymore. His eyes hardened. So what do you want? He asked. The question wasn't about reconciliation. It was about control. I want you to tell the truth, I said. To everyone. He laughed once, sharp and humorless. That would destroy everything, he said. Yes, I replied. It would. And that was the point. That evening, I received another message, this time from her. I didn't know he'd come by, she wrote. He told me you were willing to talk. I stared at the screen, so the lies were still flowing freely. I typed slowly. You stood in my house with your arms around my husband while I was 8 months pregnant. A pause. Then, he told me you were aware. There it was again. The same lie. Recycled. Reused. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't planned to do so soon. I told my parents. I told them exactly what I saw. Where it happened, how it felt. My mother cried. My father went quiet in a way that made my stomach knot. They didn't ask me to forgive. They didn't ask me to wait. They asked me what I needed. That night, my husband called again. His tone had changed. You didn't have to involve them, he said. I didn't involve them, I replied. I told them the truth. You're blowing this up, he said. No, I said. I'm letting it exist. He went silent. When he spoke again, his voice was tight. She's not the problem, he said. I know, I replied. She's just proof. Of what, he wanted to ask. Of who you are when you think no one's watching. The next morning, the social media photo was gone. Deleted, too late. Screenshots have a way of surviving regret. By the end of the week, the whispers had turned into conversations. People stopped dancing around the subject. His version of events no longer floated freely. And still, he hadn't apologized. Not once. That realization settled in slowly, solid and unmistakable. He wasn't sorry he cheated. He was sorry I had seen it. And once I understood that, something inside me shifted permanently. By the time my third trimester appointments rolled around, the affair had stopped being a rumor. It had weight now, shape, consequences that followed me into rooms I never expected it to reach. At my next prenatal checkup, the nurse asked gently if I'd like someone to come in with me. I shook my head. No, I said. It's just me. The words surprised me with how easily they came out. Just me. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt oddly grounded by that. Alone, but clear. The baby's heartbeat filled the small room, steady and strong, a sound that reminded me my body was still doing what it was meant to do, even if my marriage had failed me. When I left the clinic, my phone buzzed. A message from my husband. Can we talk after your appointment? I didn't respond. Instead, I sat in my car for a moment longer than necessary, one hand on my belly, the other gripping the steering wheel. I knew what he wanted. He wanted to manage the damage. That afternoon, I found out he'd told people we were working through things. He hadn't asked me. He hadn't checked. He'd simply started saying it out loud as if repetition could turn a lie into truth. My sister told me over dinner. He said you're taking space to calm down, she said carefully, that you'll come back once things settle. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity finally hit me. So he's already planning my return, I said. He's acting like it's temporary, she replied. Temporary. As if Christmas Eve were a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with time and silence. That evening, I received another message from him. We need to present a united front. For the baby. There it was again, the phrase he used whenever he wanted me to cooperate. I typed back slowly. There is no we right now. His reply came instantly. That's not fair. Fair. I stared at the word, then set my phone down without answering. The next time I saw him was unavoidable. We had to meet to discuss logistics, the house, the schedule, the things neither of us could avoid if we wanted to pretend to be adults about this. We met in a neutral place, a quiet cafe near the park, public enough to keep voices down, private enough to talk. He arrived early. When I walked in, he stood up instinctively, reaching for me the way he always used to. I stepped back before he could touch me. The gesture landed harder than words. He sat down slowly. "You look tired," he said. "I'm pregnant," I replied. "That's normal." He flinched. "I didn't mean—" "I know," I said. "You meant concerned." He nodded. We sat in silence for a moment. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said finally. I didn't respond. "I didn't plan for it to get this far," he continued. "It just happened." I leaned forward slightly. "You didn't trip and fall into her arms," I said. "You brought her into our house." He swallowed. "I thought I could handle it," he said. "That's the problem," I replied. "You handled it without thinking about me at all." He rubbed his temples, frustration creeping in. "You're making this about intention," he said. "I'm talking about impact." "No," I said calmly. "You're trying to minimize the impact by pretending your intentions matter more." He stared at me, clearly unprepared for that. "I've ended it," he said quickly. I raised an eyebrow. "When?" I asked. He hesitated. "That's not the point." "It is," I replied. Another pause. "Recently," he said. I nodded. "So after you realized I wouldn't stay quiet," I said. He didn't deny it. Outside the cafe window, people walked by laughing, bundled in coats, unaware of the careful dismantling happening at our table. "She knew about you," I said. He stiffened. "I told her we were married," he said. "That's not what I meant," I replied. "She thought I was aware of her." He looked away. "She told me that," I continued, "that you said I knew." "That's not exactly what I said," he muttered. "Then what did you say?" I asked. He exhaled sharply. "I said you suspected," he said, "that you were processing." Processing, as if betrayal were a software update. "So you made me the obstacle," I said, "not the affair." He didn't answer. "I want you to understand something," I said quietly. "Every lie you told her was built on a lie you told me first." His jaw tightened. "You're acting like I'm some villain," he said. "I'm acting like you cheated on your pregnant wife," I replied. Silence fell between us again. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. "What do you want from me?" he asked. The question came loaded, not with remorse, but with impatience. "I want you to stop pretending this was mutual," I said, "and I want you to stop expecting me to protect your reputation." His eyes flashed. "That's going to hurt people," he said. "Yes," I replied, "it already has." He leaned back, frustration radiating off him. "You're really going to do this," he said. "Right now, like this." "Yes," I said, because the truth was simple. I had already lost enough. By the time we stood to leave, something between us had shifted. Not broken, clarified. He no longer saw a woman who might forgive. I no longer saw a man who deserved patience. As I walked out, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "He told me you two talked today. He said things might work out." I stopped walking. The audacity of it made my hands tremble. I typed one sentence. "He doesn't get to decide that anymore." Then I blocked the number. That night, as I lay in bed, the baby pressed hard against my ribs, restless and insistent. I rested my hand there, breathing through the discomfort. "I see it now," I whispered. All of it. The affair hadn't ended. It had simply changed shape, and I was done pretending it would fade quietly into the past. The gathering was supposed to be simple. A late holiday dinner his parents insisted on hosting. Nothing formal, nothing loud. Just family. A way, they said, to reset after a difficult Christmas. I hadn't planned on going, but when my mother-in-law called, her voice careful and strained, I knew saying no would only give him more room to control the story. So I agreed. I arrived early, my sister dropping me off at the curb. The house glowed from the inside, warm light spilling out onto the driveway. Laughter floated through the walls. Normal sounds, familiar sounds. I took a slow breath before stepping inside. People greeted me with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Too gentle, too rehearsed. "How are you feeling?" "You look tired." "Almost there now." No one mentioned Christmas Eve. No one mentioned her. My husband wasn't in the room when I arrived. I noticed immediately. I took a seat near the edge of the living room, careful with my movements. My body heavier now than it had been even a week ago. The baby shifted inside me, restless. Dinner was served. Plates clinked. Conversations overlapped. Someone poured wine. Someone joked about how next year would look different with a baby around. I smiled when expected. Then the front door opened. I didn't look up right away. I didn't need to. I felt the change before I saw it. The subtle shift in energy. The pause that rippled through the room like a held breath. My husband stepped inside, and he wasn't alone. She walked in beside him, her hand resting lightly at his elbow, as if it belonged there. She smiled politely, scanning the room, her posture relaxed, confident, as though she had every right to be there. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then his mother stood up abruptly. "What is this?" she asked. My husband froze. "This is," he began, then stopped. The silence stretched. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure others could hear it. "She's a friend," he said finally. "A friend." The word echoed uselessly in the room. The woman beside him shifted, clearly surprised by the introduction. He hadn't prepared her for this version of events. I stood slowly, every movement deliberate. "She's not a friend," I said. My voice was steady, clear. Heads turned toward me. "She's the woman I walked in on with my husband on Christmas Eve," I continued, "in our living room, while I was 8 months pregnant." Gas rippled through the room. Someone dropped a fork. His mother's face drained of color. "What?" she whispered. The woman beside my husband stiffened. "He told me you knew," she said suddenly, looking at me now. "He said you were aware." A murmur spread. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "There it is," I said quietly. "The lie he told both of us." My husband's face had gone pale. "This is not the place for this," he snapped. "You made it the play," I replied. "When you brought her here." His father stood up slowly, anger radiating off him. "Is this true?" he asked. My husband opened his mouth, then closed it again. That hesitation was louder than any confession. "She's been seeing him for months," I said. "At least, possibly longer." The woman beside him shook her head. "You told me the marriage was over," she said to him. "You said she was moving out." My stomach twisted. So the story had evolved again. He reached for her arm. "Not now," he muttered. She pulled away. "No," she said. "Now." The room felt too small, too tight. My mother-in-law looked at me, her eyes glossy. "You're pregnant," she said softly. "Why would he?" "Because he thought he wouldn't get caught," I said. No one contradicted me. The woman took a step back, suddenly unsure of her footing. "You said she didn't care anymore," she said to him, "that you were staying for the baby." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "He told me he loved me," I said, "and told everyone else we were working through things." The lies overlapped now, tangling together in a way no one could untangle cleanly. "That's enough," my husband said, raising his voice. "This doesn't need to be a spectacle." A spectacle, as if I had planned this moment instead of enduring it. "You don't get to decide that," I said. My hands were trembling now. I rested one on my belly instinctively. The baby kicked hard, sharp enough to steal my breath. My sister stood immediately. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," then I said. "I just needed this to stop being a secret." The woman looked around the room, realization settling in. "I didn't know she was this far along," she whispered. I met her gaze. "Now you do." She turned back to him. "You told me you were separated." "I said things were complicated," he replied defensively. Her expression hardened. "You said she was okay with it." Silence. His mother's voice cut through it. "Leave," she said. Not to me, but to him. He stared at her. "Take her," she continued, nodding toward the woman, "and leave." He didn't argue. He grabbed his coat, his movements jerky now, unsteady. The woman followed a step behind him, no longer touching him. As the door closed behind them, the room exhaled. Someone started to cry. I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. My mother-in-law came to me, kneeling despite her age. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't know." "I know," I replied. That was the truth. She hadn't known, but he had. That night as my sister helped me into the car, my phone buzzed. A message from him. "You didn't have to do that." I stared at the screen. Then I typed back, "You didn't have to cheat." I turned the phone off. Behind us, the house lights dimmed, the gathering dissolving into fragments and whispers. The secret was gone. The damage wasn't. And for the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt something close to solid beneath my feet. The first thing that changed was the silence. After the family gathering, my husband stopped calling every hour. He stopped sending long messages explaining himself. He stopped pushing. At first, I thought it was distance. Then I realized it was restraint. When he did speak, his words were measured, careful, almost humble. "I don't expect anything from you," he said one evening. "I just want to show you I can do better." He didn't mention her. That more than anything made it feel real. He didn't rush me, didn't demand forgiveness, didn't weaponize the baby. He simply stayed available, present, quiet. Family pressure crept in gently. "He's different," his mother said. "He's embarrassed," my sister admitted. "He's trying," someone else added. Trying. Pregnancy drains anger in strange ways. Not because you forgive, but because your body doesn't have the energy to hold rage forever. Exhaustion replaced fury. Stability started sounding like relief. So I agreed to small things: a shared meal, a short visit, an afternoon together without talking about the past. The house felt unfamiliar, like a place I had once lived in a different life. He moved around it carefully, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. He didn't touch me unless I initiated it. He slept on the edge of the bed when I stayed over. "I'm not trying to rush you," he said softly. "I just want you to feel safe." And for a moment, a dangerous, honest moment, I almost did. That was the part no one would expect. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but hesitation. I didn't tell anyone I was considering coming back. I didn't even tell myself. I just allowed the possibility to sit there quietly, like an unanswered question. The feeling didn't arrive as suspicion. It arrived as absence. He was there, but slightly delayed, slightly distracted, slightly off in ways too subtle to accuse. He never disappeared suddenly. He never canceled last minute. He never did anything obvious. That was the mistake. One night, he said he needed to step out to clear his head. "I won't be long," he said. "Just a drive." An hour passed, then two. No messages, no missed calls. When he finally returned, his explanation fit. Almost. Almost was the problem. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I watched. Over days, patterns formed quietly. The same errand at the same time. The same silence afterward. The same calm when he returned. Too calm. He never smelled like another woman. He never came back flustered. He came back settled. That's when I knew. So I waited. I let him think the distance was closing. I let him think the tension was easing. I stayed over again. Then one night, he left. Later than usual. This time, I didn't follow immediately. I waited until the trail had cooled. Until following wouldn't look like paranoia, but confirmation. I drove without rushing. And that's when I saw them. Not hidden, not sneaking. Standing beside his car under a dim streetlight, her hands resting on his chest, his mouth pressed against hers. Slow, familiar, unhurried. No panic, no urgency, no guilt. The kiss wasn't passionate, it was practiced. That was the worst part. I didn't interrupt. I didn't cry. I didn't record. I watched long enough to understand something final. Christmas Eve hadn't been a mistake. It had been a preview. I went home. I packed. I left without a word. No confrontation, no explanation, no goodbye. Weeks later, when he realized what he'd lost, it was already irreversible. Not because I was angry, but because I was finished. I didn't leave because he cheated. I left because, even after being caught, he chose to keep going. And this time, I didn't need proof. I had clarity. The following month, labor began in the early hours of the morning. There was no panic, no rush to call anyone except the hospital. By the time I arrived, everything that needed to be decided had already been decided. Quietly, weeks before. The paperwork was clear. Emergency contact, not him. Delivery support, not him. Updates and access, restricted. The nurse didn't ask questions. She simply followed the file. That was the first time it truly sank in for me how permanent some decisions become once they're written down. The delivery room was calm, focused, empty in a way that felt intentional rather than lonely. When my child was placed in my arms, crying and warm and real, something settled inside me that no apology ever could. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't feel the urge to notify him. The moment belonged to us, and that was enough. He found out hours later through someone else. His messages came in waves. I didn't know you were in labor. Why didn't anyone call me? This isn't fair. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, because the truth no longer required explanation. In the weeks that followed, everything moved through proper channels, slowly, carefully, with boundaries where trust used to be. He asked to see the baby. He was told there were steps. He asked why things had to be this way. He was told the same answer I had learned to accept months earlier. Actions change access. Some losses don't announce themselves loudly. They arrive as silence, as distance, as moments you don't get invited into. Late one night, rocking my child to sleep, I thought back to Christmas Eve, to the woman behind him, to the hand on her shoulder, to the lie I walked in on. That night broke something, but it also showed me something. He thought cheating was a private failure. He didn't realize it would follow him into fatherhood. I didn't take anything from him. I just stopped protecting what he refused to honor. If this story moved you, turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Like, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps this channel grow.